Hello everyone, this is Bat-kun. Do not forget to leave that like and subscribe to the channel. The anime begins with a young man who was walking down the street without any worries, until at a certain moment he witnesses an individual attempting to assassinate two young girls who were coming out of a market. He gathers his courage and goes to stop him, but ends up being stabbed by him. The thief, upon seeing him, becomes frightened and flees, while the young man faints in front of the two girls. But thanks to the Isekai god, he is reborn in another world in the body of Cain, a small boy of 3 years old who had been sleeping for an entire week. Upon waking up in this new body, he is very surprised, thinking that he was in a very luxurious hospital, until he is attended to by his mother and by the maid Sylvia. And upon seeing himself in the mirror, he is left in disbelief, upon realizing that he reincarnated in the body of a child. His mother and the maid go out to search, and he thinks that he must update himself and discover where he is located. After that embarrassing moment and the diaper change, she gives him food and tries to make him sleep, a moment which he takes advantage of to ask about everything, discovering that his full name is Cain von Silford, that he is 3 years old and is the son of Garin, a high member of the nobility. He possesses his own army and is in charge of defending the kingdom from the invaders of other kingdoms. He also discovers that his mother is named Sarah and that he has an older sister named Riani, in addition to two much older brothers, who are sons of the first wife named Maria, Jin and Alec. He learns that there exist magical beasts and adventurers in charge of defeating them. He asks if they use swords and magic, and she confirms this, leaving him very excited because he also wants to learn how to use magic. But for that, first he must learn the alphabet, so he decides to live fully in this new world. Since after all in his past life, he was left alone after losing his grandfather, who was his only living family member. So there is nothing that holds him to the past. Some time later he dedicates himself to studying magic, leaving his entire family surprised with his great performance, since before he did not have any type of interest in it. Therefore his father decides to support him, allowing him to read all of his magic books so that he learns the theoretical part before the practice, since in order to be able to use magic first he must complete 5 years to be baptized and obtain the blessing of the gods. But none of that applies to Cain, who hidden in his bedroom realizes that he can use it and tries to make it so that his family does not find out. However, he gets very excited and lets himself be carried away and almost burns his room, besides almost being discovered by his sister. Upon seeing that Cain is very interested in learning magic and the history of his kingdom, she begins to teach him that in the 300 years of the kingdom, the first king named Yuya, before being the founder, was just an adventurer. She also tells him that there exist other races, such as elves, dwarves, humans, beastmen, besides extremely cute creatures. 2 years later, he prepares to go to his baptism, where his parents feel proud of his rapid growth. He thanks them for their support. On the way to the baptism, he becomes fascinated with the outside and asks his sister to show him her status screen. Upon doing this, he realizes that she had several skills at level 1, and that besides that, she was also obsessed with him. She asks irritably if he saw the title, but he plays dumb and says that he did not see anything, and that he only concentrated on the skills, since she possesses 3 elemental magics. His mother mentions that Riani received the level 2 blessing from the goddess of magic, and his father explains that these blessings go from level 1 to level 5, and that the higher the level is, the greater the talent of the individual will be. He asks who is responsible for giving the blessings, and his father answers that it is the gods, and that in that world one professes the religion of Marineford, which is governed by 7 gods as pillars. Upon arriving at the sanctuary, they inform that they want to baptize Cain, and at the moment in which the baptism begins, the hall is illuminated, and he enters the existential plane of the gods, where he finds these 7. They mention that they were waiting for him, calling him by the name of Kazuya, that is to say, who he was in his past life. The god of creation Zenom makes him know that he can read everything that he thinks, so he asks the goddess Lime to explain the reason for his reincarnation. The goddess of the cycle of life and death tells him that his death was not planned, since in reality the thief of the shop was going to trip and would be captured by other people, so his intervention was not necessary. Furthermore, because of that, at the moment of dying the criminal ended up becoming a murderer. But as he was courageous when trying to help the girls and died doing a good deed, the god of the earth asked that they let him reincarnate in that world, and so that the breastfeeding phase and the diaper changes would not affect him. They blocked his memories, but he ended up recovering everything upon completing 3 years. The hero expresses gratitude, since thanks to that he can study a lot of magic and lead a good life with his family. He ends up pleasing all the gods, and each one of them grants him their blessing. The goddess of magic, the creator god, the god of war, the god of skills, the god of commerce who additionally gives him 2 very useful skills, and finally, the goddess of the earth. Thus the fellow obtained the blessing of everyone. The maximum score was 5, but this fellow ended up obtaining 10 in each of the blessings. Upon returning to normality, his father asks him to show his statistics, but he has a bad feeling. So he runs away with the excuse that he has a stomach ache. The moment he sees his statistics, he realizes that the gods went beyond the limits by giving him so much power, and he understands why Zenom was laughing. Looking for a way to hide his statistics, he sees the message from Zenom, whose blessing allows him to create spells with which he can conceal his true data. Back home, he apologizes to everyone for having left, saying that he is already much better. They celebrate his birthday, and, while they feast, they wonder about the light that appeared at the moment of the baptism. His father then asks him to show his statistics, and he, confident that he had hidden them, shows them. This leaves his father and the entire family surprised upon seeing such great power in someone only 5 years old. Everyone is happy, but at the same time, his father says that he must not show his statistics because, being so powerful, the king might consider him a threat, and in case he commits any error, he could be placed under the supervision of the kingdom. He demands from his servants that no one reveal what they saw, and orders that Cain show his statistics to no one. He accepts and goes to his room, where he finds the Book of Summons. Wanting to summon a cute and plump creature that would comfort him, he goes to the garden, but ends up summoning an enormous demon, which has nothing cute about it. To make matters worse, Riami and a girl named Parma were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Cain prepares to defend them. Remembering his past, he sends the demon back home. The girls run worriedly toward him, who thought he was going to die again, but obviously that does not happen. He stands up calmly and asks his sister to please not tell their father anything about what occurred, saying that everything is under control, thinking that with this power he can help all the people of that world. The next day, the moment of his presentation to society arrives. His father tells him that because he is the third son, he has no right to inherit the lands and asks what he wants to do with his life. Very excited, he answers that he will be an adventurer. Cain wants to become an adventurer to save the people who need it, so his father promises to hire a tutor to train him. Already in his room, he begins to think about how this tutor would be. Perhaps a witch, or it could be a powerful warrior. While he fantasized the vision that the tutor had already arrived, and desperate he goes out using his teleportation, but fails the landing and ends up falling on top of a well-endowed redhead. After touching her incessantly, he apologizes for the accident. His butler explains that these are 2 tutors. Millie is this redhead who is a rank D adventurer, while the one with green hair is Nina, a reserved elf adventurer who, just like Millie, is also rank D. From now on, they will be his tutors and will be responsible for him during the next 3 years. So they begin the classes without wasting time. The first ones are of swordsmanship, where the redhead tells him to warm up to have a duel with her. But upon seeing his skills, the one with green hair thinks that Millie is finished. They face each other, and he proves to be very superior, making them wonder what kind of monster he is and if he really is only 5 years old. He answers yes, since only a few days ago he was baptized. Upon seeing his mastery with the sword, the one with green hair asks if he received the blessing of the god of war, and he answers yes, but that his father forbade him from speaking about his blessings. Millie, exhausted, asks him to stop because she cannot keep up with the pace. So they take a break so that Nina can begin with the magic classes. She says that her blessing from the goddess is level 3, so they will start with the basics. But Cain also warns that it is not necessary, since he learned everything from a very young age thanks to the books, showing that he knows how to control the principal elements. Nina is very surprised to see that he can cast spells without chanting them, something that normally requires a high level of training. Realizing that he is definitely a prodigy, they ask if he also has the blessing of the goddess of magic, and he confirms that he does. So he is as good with magic as he is with the sword. The girls think that there is nothing they can teach him, and the little fool confirms this by showing that he also possesses an item box. They lament upon realizing that they have nothing to offer, since his power completely surpasses them. So he asks if he can have classes outside the castle, since he has never left the mansion, except for when he was baptized. He asks them to take him outside to practice and to know the world, and they accept, since with his skills this would not be a problem. For this reason, they go to his father to try to convince him, explaining that the level of his skills is absurdly high, far surpassing basic magic, and that if they attempt to teach him intermediate magic inside the mansion, he would end up destroying everything. His parents are surprised, as they never imagined he would surpass his tutors so quickly, so they accept that he trains outside the mansion, on the condition that he returns before nightfall and limits his power. After that, they depart from the mansion, excited by the possibility of great adventure. The girls say that is a good place to train, and they ask him to test his intermediate magic against some rocks. However, upon using his fire power, he destroys not only the rock, but also a good part of the surroundings, leaving an enormous crater. They doubt very much that it is intermediate magic, and they think he must have become very tired from using so much magic power, but he responds that he feels very well. At that moment, they ask him to remain silent, because a creature is approaching, which ends up being an assassin rabbit. It evades Millie's attack and launches itself directly at Kane, but he evades quickly, defeating the little rabbit with an air bullet. They congratulate him for defeating his first beast, saying that he can sell its materials, but first he wants to show it to his family, so he stores it in his item box. Millie comments that she would like to buy a magic bag to store her items, which is a magic object very similar to his, but that it is not necessary to have the blessing of the god of commerce to use it, as they still have time and continue hunting. And Nina uses her tracking skill to look for nearby beasts, detecting some of them at 300 meters. He, very excited, asks how this magic works, and she answers that she can track the magic power of monsters and expand it into her own, feeling everything around her, and upon trying to do the same, he manages to detect 4 assassin rabbits, leaving Nina in disbelief upon seeing that he succeeded on the first try. And on top of that, he knows the exact number of monsters. He wastes no time and finishes them using his magic. And on the last one, he uses wind to push it into the forest. But when he goes after it, the girls stop him. They explain that it is a very dangerous forest, full of very powerful creatures, and that once every decade they go mad and come outside causing disasters and destruction. For this reason, the city is protected by an enormous wall. They also say that he must become a great adventurer, so that in the future he will be the one who protects the city. At night, upon seeing his statistics, he realizes that he rose to level 8, and he wonders how he rose so many levels by defeating only a few rabbits, then discovers that he possesses a passive skill that multiplies his experience by 100. My goodness, this fellow does not lack any blessing. He becomes frightened thinking about what could happen if someone discovered this hack of his, since he only wanted to live peaceful adventures. But these gods went crazy. The next day he goes out with the girls, who take him to the Adventurers Guild to seek information about the strongest monsters. They are received by the receptionist line. Millie asks if there is any monster stronger than the assassin rabbits, and she answers that it could be wolves, but warns that it can be quite dangerous. Even so, they are confident that Kane can handle it. Line asks about him, and the girls say that he is the son of the lord of the city, and she quickly apologizes for not having treated him with due respect. At that moment, a bully appears mocking Millie for walking with a boy. He commands that she abandon him and go drink with him, but she refuses, saying that they are working. Even so, the jerk insists, mocking her for being rank D, saying that she should not disobey someone of rank C for being superior. Kane intervenes, ordering that he leave her alone, saying that they are his teachers and that they need to continue the training, so he cannot allow him to keep bothering them. He pushes away the hand that was holding Nina, and the man stands up to give him a beating. But this idiot does not know who he is dealing with. Kane summons Mike Tyson, evading and throwing him to the ground. Irritated, the man tells him to stop playing, but Kane evades again and hits his other leg. Already furious, he takes a sword and attacks desperately, while Kane evades everything easily and can no longer forgive him for bothering his tutors. He holds the sword with his finger and sends him out of the guild as if it were nothing, and also sends his accomplices through the air. They thank him for having protected them, saying that next time they will be the ones who help him. Millie is surprised to see that he is also very good at hand-to-hand combat, so he responds that he also learned that from the book. From that moment on, they continued going to the forest so that he could practice, and thus suddenly 3 years pass. Kane is now 8 years old. While talking to his maid, he realizes that she is quite sad because his tutors refuse to extend the contract. She asks if he wants her to speak with his father to resolve this, but he answers that it is not necessary, as he knows he cannot keep them by his side forever. Nonetheless, he wants to reward them in some way. Since they were very good to him during these 3 years, he remembers that Millie wanted to buy a magic bag and decides that this will be the perfect gift. At night, he goes into the forest hunting monsters and storing their materials, but his activity ends up drawing the attention of the capital's soldiers, who think it is an attack by magical beasts. They sound an alarm and set out quickly to contain the supposed invasion. Meanwhile, Cain decides that it is enough and leaves using teleportation, but ends up dropping his handkerchief by accident. Upon arriving, his father discovers because of the handkerchief that it was all caused by Cain. Later, they continue hunting wolves, and the girls recognize that even though he is only 8 years old, Cain surpasses them in every sense. Being their last day as his tutors, Cain delivers to them the magic bags that they wanted so much, saying that he manufactured them himself by hunting an ogre and an earth dragon. The girls are shocked by what they hear, since not even a group of experienced Reincarnation adventurers could defeat such monsters. Cain asks them not to worry, saying that he made the bags so that they do not accumulate too many things. Even so, they know that they can store an entire house. This leaves them even more surprised, since the bag Millie wanted to buy could barely store a carriage. In other words, the bags he gave them are practically national treasures, and if someone discovers them, will they go after them? Cain guarantees that there is no problem, because the bags were made only for the 3 of them, so no one else will be able to use them. Even so, they wonder if they really deserve something so valuable, since they do not feel that they taught him that much. Cain responds that this is not true, because thanks to them he learned many things, for example, how food from outside the house can be very good, besides the importance of friendship, and how fun it is to go out on adventures. As a response, they give him a pair of goodbye kisses and say that if he needs them in the future, they will help him. Cain thanks them for everything they taught him, and thus each one follows their own path. Some time later, the years pass and the moment arrives for Cain to travel to the capital for his presentation to society, a mandatory event for the children of noble families. Now 10 years old, his sister Reincarnation is very excited to live with him in the capital, saying that he should take the admission exam to enter the school soon, but his father explains that he can only enter when he completes 12 years, so there are still 2 years left. Reincarnation says she is very excited, and that she is going to be the best in the exams, and as an older sister, she feels that she needs to set the example. His father comments that the journey to the capital takes about a week, provided they do not encounter monsters on the way. At that moment, Cain uses his search skill and detects several monsters attacking people about 3 km from there, surprising his father with the range of his skill. He says that there is a group of monsters attacking 10 people, and that they need to hurry or they will not be able to save them. His father orders the soldiers to advance quickly, but Cain thinks they will not arrive in time, so he decides to go ahead, because otherwise it will be too late. His parents try to stop him, saying that it is very dangerous, but he responds that he will be fine. After all, he was trained by 2 excellent tutors. He leaps from the carriage and uses his magic to advance at high speed. Meanwhile, wild boar monsters attack soldiers of the kingdom, who were desperately trying to protect the carriage, because inside it was a princess. One of the boars advances to attack, but at that moment Cain arrives and eliminates. The soldiers warn him that it is too dangerous for a child, but he continues advancing, defeating all the monsters along the way. In the air, he observes how the soldiers were being cornered, so he interrupts his attack so as not to hurt them and chooses to use another technique, with which he eliminates 2 of them, leaving only the leader of the boars. He evades the attacks and ends up eliminating it completely, using his fire sword. After defeating it, he asks a soldier if he is alright, but these ungrateful people tell him not to approach the carriage, so he introduces himself as the 3rd son of the Margrave. He says his name, Cain von Silford, leaving the soldier surprised. At that moment, his father's soldiers arrive at the location, and are impressed to see that all the monsters had already been defeated. A soldier falls gravely wounded and Cain rushes to help him, using his healing magic to cure everyone around. He explains that they need to nourish themselves, as he cannot recover lost blood, and since he cannot revive the soldiers who died, he stores their bodies to perform a funeral later. When his parents arrive, they are in disbelief at the scene, even more so upon seeing the crest of the carriage that belonged to the house of Duke Santana. Upon opening the doors, 2 girls emerge, who are Princess Telestia and Lady Silk. He is happy to see that they are well, but he is surprised to be before the princess and the daughter of a duke. The girls thank him for saving them and wonder who the little guy is. His father then introduces him and Cain states his name, happy that they are safe. Suddenly Telestia faints and Cain asks if he can help them with his magic. After receiving permission, he uses his magic to calm their minds, making all the fatigue and pain disappear. After being relieved, Telestia runs to him, introducing herself and thanking him for everything he did. Silk, also not wanting to be left behind, also attacks poor Cain, doing the same, and the two soon begin to compete to see who will stay with him. They ask what he is doing there, and he nervously responds that he is going to the capital for his presentation to society. Coincidentally, they are also going to the same place, so they ask that he accompany them, saying that they will feel safer that way. Cain was kidnapped. Desperate, he asks his father for help, but ends up being taken away regardless. During the journey, he is extremely uncomfortable between the two girls, who want to keep him trapped there, claiming to be afraid of being attacked again. The princess asks him to call her Telestia, but he responds that he cannot, as it would be disrespectful. Silk also asks him to call her by her name, and after much persistence, he has no choice but to accept. At a certain moment, the soldier appears to warn that they are close to arriving at the city of Renover, and that they should prepare themselves. Cain asks if he saw everything that happened, and the soldier answers yes, leaving him even more embarrassed. Even so, the two girls do not stop, insisting that he must take them to the capital, and indeed upon arriving at the city, he tries to say goodbye. The two say that they cannot be without him and want him to spend the night with them, claiming that they might be attacked by monsters. At that moment, his father intervenes to save him, saying that they are still too young to share a room, as it would be inappropriate. But the girls end up insisting a lot, dramatizing, so there is no other option but to spend the night with them. But with one condition. He asks that the room be very large and that the beds be well separated. However, they end up staying in a small room with beds close together. He lies down in the middle to stay between the two, but Silk wastes no time and joins her bed to Cain's, causing Telestia to do the same. He begs them to please put the beds back in their places, but they respond that they are afraid to be far from him and end up being attacked by some monster, imploring to sleep together, causing the young man to be unable to sleep the entire night because of the nervousness. The next day, the journey to the capital continues. While Cain thinks that he had a horrible night for not having been able to sleep, upon arriving at the palace they are received by Dine Vonsar, the vice-captain of the Royal Order of Knights. He says that the soldiers have already informed him of everything that happened and shows gratitude for his help and for having brought the bodies of the fallen companions. Cain then makes the bodies of the dead soldiers appear, and the man thanks him again, saying that thanks to him their families will be able to give them a dignified burial. Upon hearing the bells, Cain decides to go to his presentation, but he is informed that he must attend an audience with the king. He proceeds there, where the king says that on the way to the kingdom they were attacked by 50 orcs, leaving everyone present surprised upon learning that he defeated all of them alone and still healed the surviving soldiers, besides bringing the bodies of the dead back to the capital. For this reason, the king decides to reward him for performing such a feat. The king names him a baron, besides giving him 10 platinum coins and a mansion. All those present are indignant upon seeing this, refusing to believe that a 10-year-old boy has become a noble. A fat, greedy man complains that this is unthinkable, and even Cain himself thinks the same, as he does not want to draw attention. The king, irritated, commands him to be silent, saying that whoever is not capable of performing such a feat has no right to give an opinion, and that a genius of this level must be properly rewarded. The king asks if he accepts or not, and without many options, Cain accepts. The audience is closed, and he is called to remain in the royal palace and go to a hall for a private conversation. Already gathered, his father comments that he never imagined his youngest son would be the first to ascend. The king arrives accompanied by the girls, thanking Cain for having saved them. Silk's father, named Eric, also expresses his gratitude, leaving Cain a bit embarrassed. Then the king goes straight to the point and asks if he wants to marry his daughter. Eric, in the same manner, makes the same proposal. They explain that the marriage would not happen immediately, only when they reach the age of majority, but that they would be engaged from now on. Surprised, Cain asks for the reason, and the king responds that it is because they have already been seen very close, holding hands and even sleeping together, and after that, no one else would want to marry them. This leaves poor Cain cornered, and in a flashback, we see that the king, upon realizing that Telestia and Silk wanted to become his brides, decided to bind him to the kingdom by linking him to them. Back in the present, they say that he must take responsibility for his actions, while Cain laments having become involved with those two crazy girls, looking to his father for help. But he achieves nothing, no solution. Therefore, this heartthrob has no other option but to accept the proposal. At that moment, those two silly girls begin to talk about how magical the night was when they slept embracing, causing Cain to panic as he is judged by his parents, who reprimand him, saying that he must be more careful with his actions. After some time, Reincarnation scolds him for getting engaged to two weirdos, while his father comments that the king even went so far as to ask if his son was a womanizer. After that, Cain visits the church to meet with the gods and asks if they did not exaggerate by giving him so much power. They respond that they did, that he possesses inhuman abilities, and that he is currently the most powerful human in the world. Nonetheless, they say that he needs to acquire more experience and ask if he would like to ascend and become a demigod, reaching the same level as the sacred beasts and the divine dragons. However, they also warn him that there are limits that he must not surpass or test. Next, they say that the people of the kingdom are bored with the monotony and ask if he would have some way to change that, perhaps by implementing something from his past life. Cain thinks that if he manages to create something that does not exist in that world, he will have guaranteed success, so he decides to accept the mission. But before beginning, he needs to accompany his sister to buy clothes. Bored and tired of being in that place, he escapes from his sister and finds his childhood friend named Parma, whom he saved from the demon that he himself summoned. He mentions that he is in the capital for his presentation, while Parma says she is working in her uncle's shop. The uncle, named Tamanis, asks who he is, and she responds that it is the young Cain, who belongs to the nobility. Upon hearing this, Tamanis becomes embarrassed for not having treated him with due respect and asks for forgiveness. But Cain says he does not need to worry, as he does not want people to know about it. Taking the opportunity, he asks if he can see the products in the shop and is impressed by the variety. Then he states that he wants to create a recreational object and asks if Tamanis would be willing to produce and sell it. Upon showing his idea, Tamanis becomes fascinated, even though it is something simple, thinking that even the nobles would be enchanted by it. Therefore, he asks that he be allowed to manufacture them. And Cain gets excited, saying that first they are going to make the prototype, handing over a gold coin as payment. Tamanis says it is too much money, but Cain responds that he should consider it an investment, so he accepts. As the director of the company, Tamanis will put all his effort into this new project. Cain leaves the shop, but upon exiting he realizes that Reincarnation was irritated because he had left her alone and had not stayed to see how the dresses looked on her. He responds that he already knew everything would look very beautiful on her, and his sister falls for the talk, saying that when they get home, she will force him to see her again, and in fact, that night she spends a long time showing everything she bought, while he says that everything looked great on her. But when his turn arrives, the maid interrupts, warning that Mr. Tamanis asked him to go to the shop. Upon arriving, Cain is impressed to see the prototype and asks if it is already ready. Tamanis responds that he still needs to adjust some details, but he wanted to finish as quickly as possible to show it to him. Cain says it is perfect exactly as he imagined, and they begin to play to test it. And obviously, Cain wins while explaining the rules. Tamanis comments that it will certainly become very popular, and Cain thinks that is exactly what he wants, since it was a very popular game in his past life. He asks that Tamanis produce one version for the common people and another for the nobility, starting with 50 units for the nobles and 1,000 for the rest, and depending on the sales, they will produce more. Tamanis responds that his company does not have sufficient funds to produce all of that, but Cain tells him not to worry, because he himself will bear all the costs, surprising Tamanis. Then he promises to do everything possible so that the project succeeds, and an embarrassed Cain says that he does not need to bow, as it is only the first investment. Tamanis explains that they need to formalize a contract with the god of commerce to basically patent the product, being the only ones authorized to produce them for the next 3 years. They offer the product as a tribute to the god of commerce, establishing the contract and making the item exclusive to the company. With this, the sooner they begin the better, and they have 1 month to prepare everything. Cain asks that he manufacture a version much more luxurious than the others to present to the royal family. Tamanis feels insecure about creating something that meets the king's expectations, but Cain says not to worry, as he trusts him very much. Meanwhile, Cain thinks that since the prototype disappeared, the gods are probably using it, and in fact, that is exactly what is happening. Upon arriving home, everyone asks where he was, as the ceremony was about to begin, so they go quickly where his father says he will draw a lot of attention. since after everything he became a baron at such a young age. It will be better if he watches out for all the fathers who will want to introduce him to their daughters. And he says he is not worried, making his father see how mature he is, thinking that he does not seem like a 10-year-old child. Upon arriving at the ceremony, he becomes nervous, but his father tells him to stay alert. And upon entering, he realizes that the fat man who rejected his becoming a baron is inside. He meets with Eric and Silk, where his father formally presents him to society, since everything that happened was private. Eric thanks him for saving his daughter, and Kane feels uncomfortable with his frightening smile. Silk presents herself formally, and Kane praises her upon seeing her so beautiful in that dress, causing her to be very moved. However, Eric intervenes, saying that for a 10-year-old, he knows very well how to treat women. Then Garen says it is because his sister is very strict, and he became accustomed to treating her that way to keep her in a good mood. After a while, the king appears, welcoming all the noble families and their children. When they were in the presence of the king, Garen orders him to greet the princess, and after saying that she looks like a goddess, the king asks him to watch what he says, since he left his daughter completely embarrassed before those words, remarking to Garen how he could teach his son to be such a womanizer. Kane then tells the king that he would like to show him something, asking permission to take it from his item box. Then he shows him the game, mentioning that he developed it together with the Isekai company, saying that the game is called Reversi. This draws the king's attention, but he says he will observe it later, as he has matters to discuss with him regarding his daughter, ordering him to appear at the hall after finishing the ceremony, and without more options, he ends up accepting. Upon withdrawing, his father asks him about the game he made without telling him anything. So Kane responds that being the owner of a mansion, he felt he needed much more money to be able to maintain it, making his father see that he is a true noble through and through. He tells him that he is going to greet the rest of the guests and asks him to go socialize with the children. Then Silk arrives and invites him to talk for a bit. Since Telestia was still with the king, he asks that she please stop calling him so formally and just call him by his name, causing Silk to begin flirting with him, repeating it several times. But she is interrupted by Habit, the son of the fat man, who was fantasizing about her. Silk responds to him in a cold manner, while the fat man's sycophants tell Kane that he must properly greet the son of Marquis Corgino. He greets him in a normal way, introducing himself as Baron Kane, causing them to judge him by thinking he is the son of a simple baron, while Habit tries to humiliate him in front of Silk, who does not even care about him and tells him to watch what he says. Kane intervenes, telling her that everything is fine, causing Habit, irritated by not receiving an apology from Kane, to demand to go outside to face him. Once outside, a worried Silk asks what he intends to do, since he is going to face many people at the same time. Habit orders his henchmen to attack him with the blessing of the gods that was granted to them, but they end up humiliating themselves. He puts on a show only to finally throw a small fireball that looks more like a marble, and the others end up doing the same nonsense, while Silk takes advantage of the drama to draw even closer to Kane. But she, already tired of the nonsense, reveals that Kane is not the son of a simple baron, but that he is a baron himself, causing the trio of brats to panic. She recounts that he is the third son of Margrave Garen von Silford, and that it was also him alone, without anyone's help, who saved her and Telestia from an army of 30 orcs, making the boys remember that they had heard rumors that a boy of the same age as them had ascended to the rank of baron after that. Then, desperate, they beg for forgiveness for having treated him in that manner, since they did not know who he really was, and they flee quickly from the place, while Silk asks if he already knew from the beginning that it was a misunderstanding, saying that if that is the case he has a dark side and that he should tell Telestia about it, but he begs her please not to do so, though she blackmails him by asking for a date. At that moment Telestia arrives and hears them talking, and Kane tries to silence her so she says nothing. But he ends up worsening the situation since he touched the lips of a girl without being married, so he must take responsibility for it. Silk mentions that they are going to have a date, causing Telestia to become jealous, demanding that she have one as well, and after a tantrum Kane accepts to have a date with her. But the king overhears, saying that they will have to have a much longer and more detailed conversation to make it clear how things are with his daughter, leaving Kane in a state of panic. After a long time, he meets with the king and Eric, where they have a match of Reversi, and the king says that it would be better if this stayed only between them. But Kane opposes this, saying that the ideal is to share the fun with all the people of the kingdom. However, Eric intervenes, saying that he heard about the date he is going to have with his daughter, And although the engagement is already decided, it is still a secret. So the two future fathers-in-law say that the best thing is for him to be careful with what he does. Sometime later, the Prime Minister Magna delivers the map and the keys to his new mansion, mentioning that when the king learned that he was going to the royal palace, he wanted to escape the meeting to go play with him. So Kane feels relieved for not having to play against the king since he was busy. However, at that exact moment, Eric enters and challenges him to a duel, causing Magna and the rest of the nobles who were at the location to also challenge him. So Kane loses hope of going home earlier. Later he arrives at his mansion, which was in ruins, and upon entering and illuminating the surroundings, he realizes that the entire mansion was collapsing, in a completely lamentable state and full of dust. But with a simple magical touch, he repairs and cleans everything completely, leaving it like new, and right after finishing he goes to receive his servants who came to work at his mansion at his request. Sylvia says that she will strive to give him the best service, while Corin introduces himself and says that he will be his new butler, mentioning that the butler of his father's house spoke much about him and all his great deeds. The girls begin to clean the entire mansion, but upon starting they realize that everything was already impeccable, and Kane says that he cleaned and repaired everything with magic before they arrived. Sylvia says that she already imagined that, while Corin is surprised to see how she accepts everything that Kane says without questioning. The girl goes to install all of his belongings, while Corin says that he will take care of everything, recommending that he return to his father's house, since his older brothers were back. Upon meeting with them, they say that they never imagined that he would manage to become a noble much before them. They feel very proud of him. Riani becomes anxious to go get to know his mansion, and one of his brothers asks if she is sure, since after all it was an abandoned mansion, so it will certainly have many ghosts. But she responds that it is not a problem, because Kane will protect her. A time later, everyone goes to his mansion, where they are impressed, because it looked recently built. So his father asks if he was the one responsible, since years ago it was in ruins. And Kane confesses that he used magic to leave it like new. Kane shows all the rooms enchanting his entire family, but upon arriving at the library his father says that he needs to obtain works of art, since the nobility is interested in decorating with paintings, armors, and even stuffed monsters. Upon hearing this, Kane gets excited and leaves quickly to place one of those, but then the panic-stricken scream of Sylvia is heard, and upon arriving at the scene, he is shocked to see an enormous red dragon in the main hall. Kane says that it is just a stuffed dragon, but his father asks how he obtained it, and he responds that he defeated it some time ago, leaving Garen surprised, since the red dragon is a calamity-level monster, and not even a high-class group of adventurers would manage to defeat it without losing some lives. So he says to warn the maids the next time, to prevent any of them from having a heart attack, and comments that a red dragon is worth at least 5,000 platinum coins, so that alone is more than enough as a luxurious decoration. Kane, upon doing the calculations, is surprised to see that his sculpture is worth more than 10 million yen. At that moment he hears another scream, and upon arriving he discovers that it is his mother who was enchanted with the water jet of the toilet, saying that it is majestic how it cleans her backside, and Riani asks him to do the same at their house. Garen says that it is a lot of fuss for a simple toilet, but then they invite him to use it, and after testing it, he also becomes enchanted with this little jet, telling Sarah that at their house they will also have one, and he also comments to Kane that his guests will love to see it. Kane questions which guests he is talking about, and his father explains that nobles with a mansion must present them to society, irritating Kane with so much formality. That night he wonders what he should do, and Corin says that he already has everything resolved, delivering a list with the guests and everything that will be necessary. Upon reviewing the names, he perceives that Marquis Corgino is included and asks Corin if it is really necessary to invite him, since they do not get along. But he responds that because he is a marquis he must be invited as part of the high nobility. Kane asks if he can invite the king as well, but he responds that only counts and higher level nobles can invite royalty. So he looks at everything he needs to prepare and wonders what he could give as a gift to someone of the nobility, while Sylvia suggests that instead of following only formalities, he should offer hospitality. This causes Kane to begin creating several luxurious glasses with magic as a gift for all the guests, besides teaching his cooks how to make hamburgers and transforming common wine into sparkling wine, leaving Sylvia marveled upon tasting these things, becoming enchanted with the food and practically addicted to the alcohol. At that moment, Corin warns that a messenger has arrived from the royal palace, summoning Cain for a meeting with the king, and upon meeting with him, the irritated king complains about not having been invited to the presentation of the mansion. While Eric and Magna had already been invited and kept rubbing it in his face, Cain explains that he intended to deliver the invitation personally when they met again. But since the king is very busy, he had no opportunity, so he delivers the letter that Corin had suggested taking in case this happened. The excited king rubs his letter in Eric's face, saying that he always knew he would have an invitation. His future fathers-in-law say that they will bring their daughters and are anxious to go to the gathering. At night, his maids are impressed with the news, wondering why the king would go since Cain does not belong to the high nobility. And Cain explains that it is because he is the fiancé of Princess Telestia. The girls become very nervous about having to serve royalty, but Sylvia says that they only need to give their best to offer the best service, an excellent service, while he says that he trusts them, motivating them. When the night arrives, the guests begin to arrive, and he receives them at the entrance accompanied by Corin. Eric arrives along with Silk, who express thanks for the invitation, and upon entering the mansion they are impressed with the sculpture, seeing that Cain impresses them more and more. Meanwhile, Silk mentions that one day she will live together with him. So her father says that everything has its proper time, so she does not need to keep saying these things all the time. He informs that Cain must give the welcome to the rest of the guests. Cain states that he hopes they enjoy everything he prepared for them, causing the people to become fascinated upon tasting the drink, seeing the luxurious glasses, and experiencing the delicious food, commenting that he has already conquered the girls' hearts through the stomach, praising him for being a first-rate womanizer. At that moment, the king arrives at the presentation, becoming enchanted with the glass and even more fascinated upon tasting the drink. Cain suggests that he taste the food and the king delights in the flavor. Then the queen mentions the famous backside washing jet, as she was enchanted, saying that it is something revolutionary and that they urgently need it in the royal palace. And the king, upon trying it, demands that Cain install it in the palace as well. The next day, the king praises him with the best of compliments for the incredible hospitality, leaving everyone impressed and congratulating Cain. However, at that moment, Corin warns that Corgino had arrived, so they go out to receive him, and he, with an arrogant attitude, despises everything that was offered, mocking the small mansion and all the rest. Cain prevents Corin from giving him a shaking, but immediately afterward Corgino is frightened by the sculpture. But Cain says that it is just something stuffed. Upon entering the hall, he mocks everyone, judging them as a bunch of insignificant people. Upon tasting the drink, he is enchanted, but says that it is horrible, and upon tasting the food says that it is disgusting. Cain, already weary of his actions, devises a plan, causing Corgino to expose himself before everyone by demanding more goblets, while Cain awaits the arrival of Ray. When Viscount Corgino enters into a state of panic regarding his behavior, as he was unaware that Ray was present at the presentation, and the king states that his attitude is unacceptable, for he is a marquess and must set an example for the nobility, reprimanding him and causing him to flee in desperation. Silk comments that Cain was wicked for using Ray and her father to teach him a lesson, but at that moment he is discovered by them, causing him to panic and apologize for having used them. Later, when they were alone, they reprimand him for 2 hours. A few days later, while walking through the royal palace, he encounters the vice captain, whom he asks where he can leave some monsters that Magna requested of him. He thinks of a location and decides to take him to the warehouse to leave them there. But when Cain sees it, he remarks that it is far too small, leaving the vice captain quite surprised, wondering if they are of the same level as the red dragon at his mansion. Cain responds that it is nothing impressive, merely an earth dragon, but this surprises him even more, since rank A adventurers would have difficulty defeating it. He asks if it truly is an earth dragon, and Cain responds that in truth he does not understand much about dragons, but that it is something quite large, so he suggests leaving it in the courtyard. Cain removes it from his item box, causing Adam to nearly have a heart attack. Questioning if he is truly a child, he asks if he might be some kind of hero or a disciple of the gods, leaving Cain a bit nervous, who responds that he is merely the son of a marquess. He tells him not to change the subject, and when Cain was about to leave, he detains him and requests that he train with the soldiers, saying that he would like to introduce him to the captain since she enjoys strong people. Without much of a place to flee, Cain accepts. Upon arriving with the soldiers, the vice captain introduces her, reminding everyone that it was he who saved Princess Telestia from 30 orcs without anyone's help. Cain asks for the captain, and they respond that she will arrive at any moment. probably when they are fighting since she never refuses a good combat, frightening poor Kane, who imagines that she must be a wild beast. The vice captain tells him not to worry, since she will not do anything, or at least that is what he expects, and orders that the combat begin. One of the soldiers objects, saying that he is merely a child, and that being from the royal cavalry, it would be an abuse to face him. Dane responds that if that is a problem, then he can begin first. Upon starting the combat, the soldier grants him the first move, but Kane humbles him with a single attack, making him surrender. Sensing a bad premonition, he tries to flee, but Dane detains him, saying that because he exceeded his expectations, it will be better to face all the soldiers at the same time. When they were about to attack him, they are interrupted by the captain, who asks how they can attack a child and if they have no honor. She consoles Kane, asking if he is alright, and says that he no longer needs to worry because she will protect him. Kane is surprised to see that she is an elf. His womanizing senses are immediately stirred. The captain reprimands the vice captain for permitting that, but after hearing that it was he who defeated 30 orcs and saved the princess, her attitude changes completely, and she challenges him to a duel. Someone questions what happened to the training, and the soldiers move away to watch the combat more comfortably, saying that Kane will not be able to defeat her, since she is a master swordsman. Kane says that he only has a wooden sword, while hers is a real one, but she responds that it has no edge. They begin to fight, leaving all the soldiers impressed upon seeing that Kane is at the same level as the captain, considered the strongest in the kingdom. Quickly he increases his strength and defeats her completely, but that was his greatest mistake, because it ends up causing her to fall in love with him and become a stalker. She says that she will marry him, leaving Kane and everyone around him shocked, but he responds that he is only 10 years old and does not even know her. She then introduces herself as Stefana von Belliver, revealing that she is the daughter of Duke Leafrey, and that besides being the captain she is also a vice-countess, and that age does not matter, since being an elf she will live at least 300 years. But that is what worries Kane the least, who hides behind Dane and says that being the daughter of a duke she should not make hasty decisions. She responds that there is no problem, because upon leaving home she told her family that she would only return with a husband. Kane responds that she can speak for herself, but he needs to consult many people about this. Dane tries to help, but pretends to know nothing, and Tefana orders that they seek an audience with the king to expedite the marriage. Thus she takes Kane, practically dragging him along. Upon arriving before the king and revealing her intentions, both he and his father are shocked and demand an explanation. Kane recounts everything that happened, and the king asks if he mentioned his engagement to Telestia. He responds that, since it was a confidential matter, he preferred not to mention it. His father asks if he is unaware of the position Tefana holds, but Kane responds that he knows nothing other than her being the captain of the Order of Knights. The king then reveals that elves are a highly valued race and that many countries waged wars to enslave them, until the kingdom of Esfort, under the command of the first king, took their lands under protection, forming an alliance with the Elven kingdom. In other words, Tefana is essentially a princess. The king reveals to Tefana that Kane is already engaged to his daughter and also to Duke Eric's daughter, but this only increases her desire to marry him even further. Since he is recognized by such important figures, and having no other alternative, they order her to write a letter to her father requesting permission. Excited, she leaves, practically kidnapping Kane as she goes. When they are alone, they comment on how incredible it is that he defeated her, since that makes him the strongest in the kingdom, questioning if the captain was not in her best form. However, Dane affirms that such is not the case. The king asks Garm about this, since he is his father, but he responds that he is just as surprised as they are. Dane mentions that when he asked if he was a disciple of the gods, Kane became very nervous, making the king suspect there is something special about him. Magnus says there is a way to find out. A few days later, Kane encounters Dane again, fearing that Tefana might appear and force him to fight her all the time, revealing that thanks to the battles he unlocked the title of Master Swordsman. But at that moment, he hears her in the distance and tries to flee. Because of this, Dane catches him and takes him to the king. Upon meeting, Kane wonders what he has done this time, since everyone is gathered, but the king tells him not to worry, for he only wanted to show him something. Magna hands him a unique emperor-level magic book, revealing that it was written by the first king of Esfort, and Kane becomes excited, wondering if he can read it. Upon receiving permission, he becomes fascinated to see spells he did not know before, but everyone is surprised to realize that the book is written in Japanese, a language that no one there can read. Kane then notices that the name of the first king is written in Japanese, so perhaps he also reincarnated just like him. The king asks who he truly is, and a worried Kane thinks about what to say, fearing he might lose everything if he tells the truth. However, trusting them, he decides to reveal everything, making them promise that nothing they hear will leave that room, and that if they cannot understand, he will have no choice but to leave the kingdom. He explains that he retains memories of his past life from a very different land, where the first king also came from, and apologizes for not having told them sooner. Garm asks if he is truly his son, and Kane responds that he is, or at least that was what the gods said when he was baptized, leaving everyone shocked upon realizing that he spoke with the gods. They are even more impacted when he reveals that he speaks with the 7 gods whenever he goes to the church. His father asks him to show his statistics, and upon doing so, he nearly has a heart attack seeing that he possesses the blessing of the 7 gods, surpassing the maximum level. The king says that if his titles are real, both he and the entire kingdom would have to bow before him, as being the chosen one of the gods surpasses any title in the world. Kane responds that he wants none of that. Even having memories of his past life, he is happy with his current life, with a father and a mother who were kind to him, enchanted by being able to use magic, fight monsters, and meet important people. Since in his past life he lost everything and was a failure, he wishes to continue living this wonderful new life as it is. He tells his father that he is grateful to be his son, and apologizes to the king for having hidden everything, asking that they continue treating him as they always have. The king responds that there is no problem, and that he may continue his life as he wishes, but suggests that he should become king, leaving everyone surprised. At that moment, they are interrupted by Tefana, who had already obtained permission from her father to marry, and she kidnaps Kane to continue with their battle encounters. Eric tells the king that seeing how Kane behaves, there is nothing to worry about. The king, more relieved, orders that nothing said in that room be revealed, not even to their own families, and asks Kane to protect his loved ones and the entire kingdom with his great strength. A few days later, Kane is confronted by his fiancées, because they discovered that he is also engaged to Tefana. He explains that after training with the soldiers, he ended up in this situation. Silk comments that if he continues like this, as an adult he will end up marrying the entire kingdom, which she finds somewhat amusing, while Tellis just says it would be better for him to stop accepting more commitments. However, they are interrupted by Tefana, who once again kidnaps him. 2 years later, Kane is in the royal library reading the book of the first king, discovering that Yuya left behind something like a diary, revealing that he also came from Japan, recounting that after being struck by the Isekai truck, he awakened in this new world. Kane is surprised to see that, unlike himself, Yuya arrived with his original body. At that moment, he is interrupted by the girls, who ask what he is doing. Silk asks if he is studying for the academy exams, and to prevent them from trying to read the book. He responds that he is, but the girls demand that they want to study together with him. So he apologizes, saying he already has plans for that day. They then suggest the following day, but he becomes even more nervous, saying that would be worse and quickly flees, but ends up bumping into Tefana, who calls him to fight alongside her. However, Kane responds that they can do that at another time and runs away, apologizing to the girls as he goes, and upon reaching his mansion he prepares himself, for his new life as an adventurer finally begins now that he has turned 12 years old, and now he can finally register at the guild. Upon entering, he is impressed by how enormous the capital's guild is, but being distracted, he ends up bumping into an adventurer. The man asks if it is his first time, and Kane responds that he just turned 12 and is there to register. He wishes him luck and leaves, telling him to be careful with his own life, since he only has one, while he thinks that he has seen that reddish hair somewhere before. Upon reaching the reception, the attendant hands him a form. Kane wonders if he should include his noble title, but since that has no relation to being an adventurer, he decides to put only his name. The attendant asks him to place a drop of blood on the crystal to register his mana on the guild card and later hands it to him, saying that he will start at rank G. Kane remembers that his teachers were at this rank and wonders if they have already leveled up. The attendant says that if he has any questions he may ask, and he thanks her. Upon realizing that he did not know her name, she introduces herself as Hacha, wishing him good luck and asking him to take great care. At that moment, they are interrupted by a group of adventurers and troublemakers who were trying to abuse Hacha. The group tries to humiliate Kane, but he merely dodges the attacks, leaving them even more irritated. One of them tries to draw his sword, but Cain stops him, warning him not to do that. Fortunately, Claude intervenes, and the bully recognizes him as Claude of the Ice Flame. He says that they cannot even hope to fight him, causing the group to flee in terror. Hacha and Cain express gratitude for the help, but he responds that he did not do it for him, since given Cain's movements, those idiots would have been the ones to come out worst. He asks for Cain's name, and after introducing themselves, he invites him for a drink. As Cain is a child and receives only fruit juice, Claude asks if he trained a lot to reach that level, and Cain responds that he has since he was small, mentioning that his tutors were also adventurers, which makes Claude react in a strange way. But he soon changes the subject, toasting to the great new adventurer. Cain asks about the nickname Ice Flame, and Claude explains that the name comes from his group, since he uses a fire sword while his wife uses ice magic. Cain is impressed to learn that he forms a team with his wife. Claude says that he should find someone special to become stronger and accept more dangerous missions, showing his golden adventurer card and revealing that he is rank A. Even so, he says that he is far below the first king who held triple rank S, and his card is black, or at least that is what they say. Suddenly his wife arrives, striking him, complaining about him drinking at this hour. Claude says that she is his wife Lena, and that she is wonderful, receiving another strike. She tells him to stop wasting time drinking and go straight to the mission. Cain introduces himself and apologizes, explaining that Claude saved him from a group of troublemakers. Lena is enchanted by his politeness and says that if he needs anything, he can speak with her. She tells him not to be deceived, because if he had not interfered, those three would have fared very poorly. But she strikes him again, saying that he is the one who will fare poorly if he does not move soon. Therefore they say goodbye to Cain, while she drags her own husband away, and Cain goes to the bulletin board in search of the first mission for his rank. He finds one that requires eliminating goblins in the forest, and as the reward is for goblins without a limit, he accepts the mission and leaves excitedly. However, he ends up being grabbed by Tefana. He asks what she is doing there, and Dane responds that the soldiers are training outside. Upon asking what Cain was doing, he explains that he has already registered as an adventurer and is heading to his first mission. But Tefana decides to accompany him, frightening poor Cain. Cain says she should be training the soldiers, but Tefana, irritated, responds by asking what kind of wife she would be if she did not accompany her husband on his first mission, ordering Dane to take charge of the training sessions. Meanwhile, Cain tries to take advantage of the distraction to flee, but he is unsuccessful and ends up being dragged along as usual. Upon arriving at the forest, she proceeds excitedly, while Cain tracks the location of the goblin. Utterly infatuated, she quickens her pace, but when they arrive, they see that a carriage is being attacked. The two spring into action. Cain heals a villager while Tefana eliminates the goblins with ease. However, they appear in much larger numbers. Cain then strengthens her with magic, increasing her attributes. Feeling the power of love, she fights as if she were one with Cain, imagining the two of them fighting together, complete with bells and even a wedding dress. Suddenly, a group of green lizards emerges, and Cain asks her to save the villager while he handles the situation. Tefana takes the villager to a safe place, while Cain illuminates the area with a ball of light and annihilates everyone with an ice pillar, also destroying a large part of the forest. Afterward, an enormous crater remained at the site where he fought, discovered by Mill and Nina, who were searching for the green lizards but realized they arrived too late, as Cain had already resolved everything. Back in the present, Cain returns to the guild to submit his mission, informing them that he also faced green lizards and defeated them. Since this was not the mission he accepted, he asks if it still counts. Hacha is impressed, as these missions are for rank D adventurers and groups of lizards are for rank C. She says he was lucky, but when Cain reveals that he defeated 30, she nearly has a heart attack and runs to inform her superior. The irritated man orders that he be brought in immediately. Upon meeting, he introduces himself as Cedric and says that since the guild master is busy, he will handle the case, demanding that Cain tell the truth about where he found the lizards, accusing him of cheating, since it is his first day. He is only rank G, and moreover he is a child, making it impossible for him to have defeated 30 alone. Hacha defends him, saying he cannot accuse him without proof, while Cain insists that he truly defeated them. However, Cedric responds that upon seeing his record he noticed he is merely a commoner, calling him a simple peasant trying to deceive the guild. Cain says he is mistaken, but Cedric tells him to shut his mouth, saying he will confiscate his card and expel him from the guild. Hacha protests against the abuse of power, but he tells her to be quiet and orders Kane to leave, leaving him in a panic over being expelled on his first day. At that moment, the guild master enters and asks why there is such an uproar. Cedric responds that Kane is trying to deceive the guild. The master observes Kane and asks the subordinate why he reached that conclusion, but after hearing the explanation, he merely laughs. Irritated, Cedric questions how he can believe a boy instead of him. At that moment, Tefana enters and throws herself upon Kane, leaving everyone shocked. Dane tells her to stop that in public, since the engagement is confidential, which leaves everyone even more surprised. She asks what Kane is doing there, and he responds that he came to resolve the matter of the lizards and the goblin. The guild master then reveals to his subordinate that Kane is a baron and, furthermore, the son of Marquess Garm, and that if he marries Tefana, he will become his brother-in-law. Cedric enters into a panic, kneels, and begs Kane for forgiveness, imploring not to be reported for disrespect. Kane asks Tefana if that type of crime truly exists, and she responds that a commoner who insults a noble can be executed. However, since Kane has a kind heart, he says he does not wish to punish him in that manner, accepting his apologies but giving a warning for him not to accuse anyone again without proof. Next, he asks the guild master if his lizards will be accepted, and he responds that they will, with pleasure, and as a form of apology, he decides to promote him, saying that rank G is too low for someone like him. Tefana then comments that Kane defeated a red dragon alone at 10 years old, and that he is stronger than she is, leaving everyone shocked. After thinking for a moment, the guild master decides to promote him directly to rank A, leaving everyone in disbelief upon seeing that on his first day, he has already achieved this level. However, he explains that Kane will still need to capture bandits to fulfill the requirements, and that the guild itself will give him special missions to consolidate the rank. He orders Hacha and Cedric to expedite all the paperwork. Upon leaving, the master formally apologizes for his subordinate's behavior, but Kane says it is no problem. The master reveals that he was surprised by his engagement to his sister, but now that he knows him, he feels more at ease, asking him to take good care of her. Meanwhile, the gods observe everything that Kane has been going through. Some wonder if it was right to give him the maximum score in his blessings, but another god affirms that it was, and that he will need to become even stronger, because the seal that keeps Eren imprisoned is about to break, and if that happens, the world will be in great danger. All agree that Kane must become even more powerful, and that the best path is to be trained by that mysterious individual. Some time later, Sylvia wakes him in desperation. She forgot to wake him for the academy exam. She gets him up hurriedly while apologizing, saying he will be late because of her. But Kane reassures her, saying there is still time. He says goodbye and teleports to the entrance of the academy, going straight to the reception where he provides his number, 285, and they direct him to room A. As he walks, he notices that there are no acquaintances on the list. Upon entering the room, he observes everyone around him and wonders if Telestia and Silk were placed in another class. The teacher begins the exam, warning that any attempt at cheating will result in expulsion and that they will have 2 hours to complete it. As it begins, Kane realizes that the test is extremely easy, at least for him. A short time later, he has already finished everything. The teacher asks if he is certain, since only 30 minutes have passed, but he responds that he has already concluded. After 2 hours, the teacher orders everyone to stop and proceed to the next evaluation, where they will have to demonstrate their skills in magic. Upon arriving at the courtyard, she says they must choose a target and use their most powerful spell. Kane becomes excited and asks if he can use all of his power, and the teacher responds that he can, since there is a defensive barrier. While the others begin, Kane observes the rest using magic and realizes they are very weak, but he understands they are only 12-year-old children. Meanwhile, he is absurdly strong, which is why he decides it would not be appropriate to use his inferno magic, as it is far too dangerous. The teacher calls him, and upon casting his magic, his fireball turns blue, surprising everyone. However, upon hitting the target, it destroys everything in its path, leaving only a trail of destruction. Kane asks what happened to the barrier, but the teacher is in shock at the power and asks what it was that he did. He responds that he only used a fireball, but she does not believe him, since no beginner spell has that level of power. The teachers go to verify that no one was injured and order everyone to proceed to the next evaluation, since the field has become unusable, leaving Kane regretful. In the next stage, the professor says they will evaluate sword skills, with the opportunity to train against ranked adventurers. Among them is Claude, Cain is surprised to see him and Claude is as well, asking what it is he is doing there. Cain explains that he is taking the admission exam and Claude decides to be his opponent for the sake of the others. Cain tries to refuse, but the professor says he cannot decline the chance, so with nothing else to be done, he simply accepts. As they begin, everyone is impressed, unable to keep up with their movements. Claude gets excited by Cain's strength and increases the intensity of the combat. The professor interrupts, saying that it is already enough, for they are frightening the other candidates. They stop and Claude suggests they do a mission together later, and they could even return to the combat. But Cain says it is better not to. The professor then says he has already evaluated his skills and there is no need to continue, sending him home and asking him to return on the day the results are released. Cain becomes irritated with Claude while he pretends not to understand. Upon arriving home, Sylvia asks how it went, and Cain responds that everything went very well and that he likely passed. Excited, she says she will prepare a lot of food to celebrate. He says it is not necessary, but his stomach growls, so she goes to make enough food for 10 people. Later, Cain meets with Ray, who reprimands him for having caused so much damage. Cain explains it was not his intention, because initially he wanted to use Emperor-level magic, but he thought it too dangerous, so he used a beginner level 1, which still caused this destruction. The surprised king asks if he truly can use Emperor-level magic. Cain says he can, but he does not know what might happen, and asks if he can test it. Receiving an immediate no, the king reprimands him and tells him to be more careful, then asks where Cain took the exam, since Telestia and Silk said they did not see him. Cain responds that he entered through the south entrance. The king explains that is the entrance for commoners, while the nobles use the north entrance. Eric comments that the director of the academy told him everything, as he found it strange for a commoner to cause such an impact, destroying the magical field and fighting on equal terms with a high-level adventurer. Upon hearing this, Eric merely laughs and asks if the boy's name is Cain. Upon confirmation, he tells the director not to worry and to publish the results. Back in the present, Magna delivers the bill for the damages caused, and the king reprimands him again, asking for more care when using his power. Cain apologizes, and the king informs him that the results will be released that very same day. Upon arriving at the academy to see the results, Cain begins to search for his name, but at that moment Silk appears, congratulating him on having taken first place in the class, saying that Telestia took second and she took third. She comments that her father told her everything he did, and says that Telestia was very irritated for not having seen him during the exam. Before leaving, she warns him that if he does not appear at the ceremony, she will make him kneel as punishment. Later, while walking, Cain encounters his sister, who says she is very proud of him for achieving the top grade, and wishing him luck on the speech. Cain asks what speech, and she explains that because he took first place, he must give a speech to all the new students. He tries to say that it would be better for Telestia to do it, but there is nothing to be done. Upon arriving home, Sylvia asks desperately how it went, and he responds that he took first place. She is extremely happy and congratulates him, saying she always knew he would be the best, and Garm also congratulates him. Sylvia, excited, runs to prepare food for 100 people, and Cain remarks that she is exaggerating, but understands it is a way to celebrate. The following day, the welcoming ceremony takes place. Cain sees his parents present to watch him, while the girls comment that he looks very handsome in the uniform, and he responds that they also look very beautiful. Later, everyone sits down for the start of the ceremony, while the other students feel envy upon seeing him accompanied by them, and some comment that Cain is like a dream. The ceremony begins and the director calls Cain to give his speech. He goes up to the stage, introduces himself, and speaks about the confusion he had on the day of the exam, thanking the teachers for letting it pass. He cites the first king, saying that everyone in the kingdom has the same right to learn, regardless of lineage, saying that he wants to make many friends. This causes everyone to applaud him. At that moment, they announce that the king is present and will also give a speech. He goes up to the stage, congratulates the new students, and asks them to give their best, sending an indirect message to Cain, who understands perfectly while his parents feel a bit embarrassed. Later, in the classroom, girls ask where he was, and Telestia responds that the king kept repeating 1,000 times for him not to do anything foolish. The teacher orders everyone to sit down and introduces herself as Elka. She explains that before they begin classes, they need to choose what they wish to study. Cain, excited, says that he wants to be an adventurer, but his future fiancés say that he cannot, since he is a noble. Tellus just says he must learn about nobility, but Kane does not like the idea much. Silk then says he can study both nobility and adventuring, which makes him quite excited. He decides to study nobility, adventuring, magic, and magic items. He asks what they are going to choose. Tellus just says she will study nobility and internal affairs. In this way, she would help him manage his future domain, while Silk chooses nobility and commerce for the same reason. Kane says he understands nothing about managing a domain, but will do his best to be a good husband. As they leave class, they see the chubby boy and his cronies bothering Palma. Kane recognizes the situation and intervenes, telling them to leave her alone, as she is his childhood friend. The boy asks why he is defending a commoner instead of his own kind, and Kane responds that it does not matter, and that he will always defend his friends. The irritated brat threatens to tell his father to ruin his family, but at that moment the princess intervenes. Upon seeing her, they panic. She says that if they continue with this behavior, she will tell the king, and they, frightened, apologize. Tellus just says they must apologize to the girl, and swallowing their pride, they apologize and leave. Kane tells Palma she can count on him whenever she needs, but the girls, seeing their proximity, order him to kneel while they talk to her. As Kane observes and realizes they are laughing, wondering if that was some kind of strange plot, he suddenly hears a voice in his head saying that he is exactly as the old man described, that he liked him and wants to talk. He heads to the library so they can have a chat, and upon opening the door, Kane is transported to another place, where he observes a house in the distance. But soon he is transported again, appearing before someone who seems to be Yuya. He offers him coffee and Kane is quite surprised, asking who he is and where he got this coffee from. The man responds that he was waiting for him, calling him by the name Kazuya. He asks Kane to lower his guard, saying that he does not intend to do him any harm, and mentions that Zenon and the other gods spoke much about him, since he also reincarnated into this world just like him. Kane asks if he knows the gods, and he responds that he does, introducing himself as Yuya Hirasawa, leaving Kane shocked upon realizing that he is dealing with the first king. Yuya is surprised to see that Kane recognizes him, and Kane comments that he reads the book he left behind regarding Emperor-level magic. Confused, he asks how he still looks the same after 300 years, thinking that perhaps he is a ghost. Yuya tells him to check for himself, and upon seeing his statistics, Kane is impacted to realize that he is a god of creation. Yuya explains that the world of Sion was named Fabrine and was created by him. Therefore, he is a god of creation and remains the same even after 300 years. Kane is extremely surprised, so Yuya reveals that Zenon and the other gods requested that he train Kane. Kane asks why, saying that he is already having difficulties because he is too powerful. Yuya then tells him to try and take a biscuit from his hand, and when he fails, he says that he still has much to learn. Kane asks why he needs to become stronger, and Yuya reveals that there is someone whom he must fight. When Kane asks who it is, Yuya tells him that 300 years ago this person caused humanity to destroy one another. He explains that Zenon, an oracle, implanted distrust in the subconscious of the people, causing them to kill each other. This enemy is Eren, the evil god. Yuya reveals that he and his companions managed to seal him 300 years ago, but the seal is breaking over time, and it is only a matter of time until he is released. Kane asks why Yuya does not seal him again, and he responds that he cannot, because now he is a god of another world, and just as the gods cannot interfere directly in earthly matters, therefore, all responsibility falls upon Kane. Yuya mentions that Kane's past life plays an important role in this, but when he tries to ask more, Kane is transported to the ocean far from his mansion. Yuya hands him a sword and says that from now on he will be his master, and that when he fulfills his objective, he will tell him the whole truth. Kane insists on knowing what the revelation of his past life has to do with all of this, but Yuya merely hands him a compass pointing toward his mansion, saying that when he manages to reach it, he will reveal everything. He also says that Kane needs to level up, because his current level is too low, and he must reach level 600 to be able to face Eren, while currently he is only at level 300. Yuya warns that this will take a considerable amount of time and prohibits the use of teleportation. Kane complains that it will take too long that way and asks about the academy. Yuya responds that he does not need to worry, because 1 year in this place is equivalent to only 1 day in the real world, like a sort of time chamber. Before leaving, Yuya says that in the end, the decision will always be Kane's. Motivated, Kane begins to train by facing a large number of monsters. Only 5 minutes have passed since he began, but he does not give up and continues fighting. Meanwhile, in the real world, Silk and Telestia go to Kane's mansion looking for him. Sylvia receives them in total desperation, apologizing for the way she received them. The girls find it strange to realize that Kane is not at the mansion, since they thought he must be at his home because he did not go to the academy. Sylvia asks if he might have gotten into trouble, or if he was kidnapped or murdered. But Telestia says not to worry, since it is Kane after all, and they should just wait for him to return home. Back to Kane, he is nearly devoured by a monster, but he reacts and finishes it off, wondering if he will ever leave this place, since months have passed without him even being able to sleep well, losing all trace of hope to continue fighting. At that point, he hears a noise from afar. Wondering what it is, he goes there thinking about what it is that makes him move. Upon arriving, he finds a wounded wolf, so he tells it that he will end its suffering. But being at the point of finishing it, he remembers the moment he intervened to save those girls in his past life, realizing what he was about to do, and apologizing to the beast for seeing it frightened, since he always had the ideal of protecting all the defenseless. Therefore, he tries to heal its wounds with his super healing, but having little mana, it costs him too much. Still, he uses all his power to try and save the life of the little one and ends up completely exhausted, fainting. Some time later, he awakens and observes how he was being protected by the little wolf, who embraces him, grateful for having healed it. So he asks if it is alone in that place, and the little one becomes quite sad. So Kane asks if he would like to accompany him. He accepts, and Kane ends up naming him Seth, causing Kane to recover his confidence. Time passes and they level up together until they finally manage to reach Yuya's mansion. Upon entering, he mentions that Kane has grown a great deal, revealing that 4 years have passed while trying to reach the mansion. Upon observing Seth, he mentions that he has obtained a Fenrir, revealing that it is a sacred beast, and Yuya notes that he trusts Kane deeply. Therefore, he mentions that he could form a contract with him to be able to summon him whenever he wishes. Kane asks him if he would like that, and he accepts, disappearing due to the contract, and Yuya tells him that he only needs to summon him for him to appear again. He says that his training has not yet finished and introduces his new combat master, Dane, who introduces himself, and Kane asks him for help so that he may fulfill his promise. He reveals what his past has to do with fighting against Eren, and he responds that they will tell him everything before he leaves. After that, his training begins with Dane, who tells him that he is still too weak and must defeat him to become stronger, mentioning that he is much weaker than Yuya, and Eren is much stronger than he is. Upon starting their combat, he ends up knocked out with a single blow, and suddenly he awakens in Dane's house. As he goes downstairs, they ask if he feels better, and a girl introduces herself saying her name is Lude, and she is Dane's wife, welcoming him to her home, revealing that it was a surprise that Dane carried him there. Kane is surprised to see a small baby dragon, and excitedly asks to be friends, but he becomes nervous and Seth becomes a bit aggressive, so Kane asks them not to fight. At that, she says that is enough, warning that it is time to eat, and Kane is enchanted by the food after spending years without eating decently. After finishing the meal, Kane thanks her for the very delicious food. Lude, enchanted, says that now he will live with them, so she will prepare many dishes, while Kane eats excitedly, wishing that all his loved ones were also eating very tasty things. At that moment, we see how Telestia and Silk were learning to cook, as they wanted to welcome Kane when he returned home. Then Sylvia reprimands them, saying that to cook they must travel a difficult path, so they need to strive so that Lord Kane will be very happy when he eats, and thus they thank her for her teachings. Returning to Kane, he continues being beaten by Dane. Every time in his training he takes a beating, passing some time and completing a year to improve his skills more and more, until he mentions that he must become much stronger to be able to defeat Eren, causing Kane to remember everything Yuya told him, revealing that previously Eren was the god of entertainment in Zenon's world. for previously there were 8 gods. He mentions that in his world there are no games nor entertainment because there is no god of entertainment, since Eren used the oracle to cause all innocent people to participate in a deadly game, causing the gods to expel him from the realm of the gods. But if the seal breaks and he returns, he will resume his deadly game, and all his loved ones would find themselves involved in the chaos. Cain, worried, asks how he can stop him, and they respond that he must become much stronger, while Yuya, for his part, mentions that he was not able to protect his friends in the fight against Eren, revealing that the people he did not protect were his parents, Megumi Sena and Sayashina, the parents from his past life. Then we see the flashback of how they were summoned to this world. Marine tells them that they must fight against Eren to be able to save him, but Kazuya's parents only wanted to return again to their son. Later we see how Marine releases them, since she did not agree with the ideals of the pontiff wanting to attract them by force. Therefore, she tells them to see how the world is changing with their own eyes, and thus they set out to reunite a few years later with the gods, who say he is the one responsible for the changes they investigate, saying that they cannot interfere in earthly matters and asking them to help them stop Eren. For this reason, they hand them the crystal to be able to seal him, and a time later they face him, as he demonstrates having colossal power. Yuya and the others had him cornered, but he attacked everyone present, eliminating a large number of soldiers, where Megumi lost her life while trying to protect Marine. Sayashina, infuriated, goes after him with all her strength, while Yuya takes the opportunity to seal Eren once and for all. With these memories in mind, Cain strengthens himself faster and faster to protect all the important people in his life and all those who find themselves in trouble, finally managing to defeat him in his training. He says that his training is now finished and he must run quickly to reunite with Yuya to see his parents, and upon doing so, he finds him at the tomb of his parents. He tells him that they always worried deeply about him, revealing that they never stopped searching for a way to return to his world to be by his side. There, he thanks them for always thinking of him, and also thanks Yuya for having taken care of his parents. As a final test, he shows him the biscuit, and he manages to take it, causing Yuya to recognize that he truly has become much stronger. He wonders if he would like to have some coffee, but he responds that he wants to return to his world as soon as possible. Before he leaves, Yuya tells him that 5 years have passed since he began training, so he cannot arrive there with that appearance, changing him completely and transforming him back into a child. Yuya tells him to take Seth with him. Then he arrives and asks him to take a small dragon so that he may also come to the world. So Cain also forms a contract with him. He thanks them for having taken care of him during all this time. And when he is about to leave, Yuya asks him to deliver a sword to the king. Upon his departure, Yuya mentions that he is a very cheerful boy, while Dane mentions that he is going to be much stronger than both of them. Yuya mentions that he truly will be, since he has something much greater to protect, in addition to having many people who also protect him. Upon arriving at the mansion, the happy girls go to embrace him, mentioning that they never lost hope of his return, and for that reason, they hand him some biscuits they prepared. As Sylvia said, he liked them very much, and he happily eats one after another, grateful for having such special people in his life. Cain bows before the king and hands him Yuya's letter, and the king is very surprised, wondering if he truly was with him. Cain tells them that he entered another world where he has lived with the god of creation, but the king and the others cannot believe it, so he shows the sword, convincing all of them. Then the king asks him to explain how it was that the first king trained him, and Cain tells them it was a very harsh training, as he had to cross an enormous forest filled with powerful monsters and fight at night until he lost his sanity. All of this for 5 years. The king is surprised and asks if he knows what he is talking about, because it makes no sense for 5 years to have passed. Eric mentions that although all this time has passed, he remains the same as always, saying that during the time he was absent, a notice arrived from the guild informing them that they were about to cancel his registration for not having accepted any of the missions assigned to him, since he needed to fulfill certain missions to legitimately achieve the rank. Cain, frightened, goes immediately to the guild, where he asks the master why they would cancel his registration. He responds that it is because he did not fulfill any of the missions assigned to him. Kane apologizes, saying that since classes began, he has not had enough time, besides many things having arisen for him to do. Even though this is a flimsy excuse since he can teleport, the master tells him that he left without warning, and that his sister was very sad, and that because he would not fight her, she was about to explode with love. Kane almost bursts into laughter and asks what will happen with his registration. Then the master responds that when he was designated, the god told him that he should capture some bandits and that he has very little time left, so he must hurry. He wonders if he should go at that very moment, and the master responds that if he does not, his registration will be cancelled. So Kane says he will go immediately. He hands him all the information, saying that the bandits roam the Glacier route and the royal capital, and asks if he will be able to handle it, since there are about 10 bandits, but then remembers that Kane is the strongest in the kingdom. He teleports to the outskirts and uses his flight magic to travel more easily, managing to detect the bandits. Upon landing, he is surprised to see that those escorting the carriage were Millie and Nina, his former tutors, and the one driving the carriage was Palma's father. Seeing that they were wounded, he heals them with his magic, while the bandits, seeing that it was merely a child, are confident in themselves, telling him to go back to his mother's lap. But he, very seriously, responds that because they hurt his tutors, they will not leave so easily. Very quickly he knocks down the first, then the second, and defeats them all with great ease. And the girls are surprised to realize that he was only holding back. After tying up the bandits, he says he is happy that they are all right. Millie asks what he is doing in that place, and he responds that he is on a mission to capture the bandits. They are struck with impact since he is only 12 years old, and the mission is intended for rank C adventurers or higher, in addition to only a few days having passed since he registered. But when he shows his golden card, they nearly suffer a heart attack. He mentions that it is difficult to explain, but he managed to rise in rank. At that moment, someone says that this is quite incredible, but wonders what they will do with the bandit. But he responds that they need not worry, for he will take care of everything. After that, they arrive at the capital, while all the citizens jeer at the bandits, saying that they are a disgrace. They reach the Isekai company, where Parma is happy to have them back. She asks who those individuals are, and he responds that they are bandits, as he took a guild mission to capture them. Her father says that while they were on the route they were attacked, but by luck Kane arrived to rescue them. But Kane responds that it was merely a coincidence, since they were the same ones from his mission. Parma says it is incredible, since even without attending classes he continues working, and besides that, he will also have to perform his duties as a baron. Then the girls are surprised to realize that he is also a baron. Millie offers 1,000 apologies for not having spoken with due respect, saying that she must also treat him with formality, but they mention that he has become a great catch. Kane says that is not necessary, since they have always been his tutors, so he asks that she continue calling him by his name, and they thank him for his humility, mentioning how much he has grown, and she gives him a warm embrace. However, nervous, he says that it is getting late and leaves quickly for the guild. The girls go after him to accompany him. Upon arriving at the guild, he delivers the mission to Hacha, mentioning that he has witnesses who can confirm the detention, while she is surprised to see how quickly he completed it. At that moment, the same bullies from before arrive trying to flirt with the girls, but they say they are not interested, ignoring them. Irritated, he tries to grab them by force, but Kane intervenes, asking that they please leave them in peace, and the bullies panic upon recognizing him. Then he shows his murderous aura to intimidate them. But at that moment Claude arrives, and Kane goes to greet him, causing the bullies to flee in desperation. Claude says that most adventurers would have trouble with a group like that, but he responds that it was because they were only bothering his friends. He asks who they are, but then is surprised to realize that they are Millie and Nina, revealing that Millie is his younger sister. They recount that they were Kane's teachers when he was only 5 years old, and seeing this coincidence, Claude proposes having some beers to celebrate, but ends up receiving a blow for wanting to get intoxicated. Even so, they end up celebrating, where they recount that by coincidence Kane helped in their mission. mentioning that he is already a ranked adventurer, which leaves Claude quite surprised, since he had registered only a few days ago. Even so, he mentions that it was to be expected, since he was the only one who managed to keep up with his pace in the entrance exams, which surprises Millie upon realizing that Kane faced her brother, since he rose to rank A only with his sword skills, without needing to use magic. Then they mention that he is not only the son of a marquess, but also a baron with his own domain, saying that he is definitely a good catch. While Claude and Lena are surprised to realize this, asking him please not to report them for their lack of respect, but he responds that they should not worry. Millie recounts that when Kane was younger he defeated a red dragon, so Claude is surprised, since it is an SS rank beast. He also shows the magic bags he gave them, and Nina asks if it was truly Kane who gave them, and out of curiosity, what is the capacity? Millie responds that she has never managed to fill it completely. Lena asks where he obtained it, and he responds that it was he who manufactured it. She asks what the capacity is, but he becomes nervous, and Nina mentions that when he gave it, he said it could store a mansion. Lena is surprised, saying that her bag cannot store much, so he responds that he will make one for them. But Lena ends up falling asleep on him. Claude mentions that Lena is terrible with drink, so they should not worry, as the next day she will forget everything. Something that makes Kane feel desperate because the next day he needs to go to classes. He says that he must depart, since he missed all of last week, so he cannot afford the luxury of continuing to be absent. While Claude asks why a noble with his own domain should go to classes, and he responds that he feels a bit out of place. But despite that, there are many things he does not know and wants to learn them. Meanwhile, Nina out of nowhere says she wants to give him a hug, but he becomes nervous and exits quickly. Cloud mentions to the girls that his life is not easy, and therefore, they should assist him in some manner. On the following day, during his magic class, the professor states that the students may attack the target with all of their strength. An excited Kane thinks that he will finally be able to demonstrate everything he learned from Yuya. However, his hopes are quickly dashed because the professor informs him that he is prohibited from using magic. She explains that she has orders to test him directly, as the school's defensive barrier cannot withstand even his beginner-level magic. Meanwhile, the small group watches from hiding and laments for poor Kane, with Cloud stating that they must be ready for their plan. After this, the professor mentions that they have special guests, and upon their entry, all the students are surprised to recognize the Ice Flame. The professor notes that he originally requested a C-rank adventurer to assist with the class, but the guild ended up doing a significant favor by sending a rank and B-rank adventurers instead. He asks who among them is registered to become an adventurer, and if they have their card with them, hoping that Kane would show his to surprise all of his classmates. However, specifically to avoid this and to prevent discouraging his companions, Kane lies and says that he forgot it at home. Consequently, Cloud mentions that he should never forget it again, while the girls comment that he is being treated in a strange way, as if he were some kind of criminal. When they go outdoors, the students are told that they will be taught how to use activation magic. In this way, they will improve their physical abilities. Kane becomes quite excited, as he will be able to demonstrate what he has learned in a battle against Cloud. But unfortunately, he ends up being last in line. He approaches Nina, but she responds that he is forbidden from using attack magic at the school. Thus, he ends up even more depressed for being unable to demonstrate his strength. Upon seeing him, Cloud mentions that the time is not yet right, as he must defeat all the students first to demonstrate his strength and be admired by everyone. And only after that would they face Kane, where he could show his power. However, things do not go as planned because just when they were about to begin, time runs out, leaving Kane very sad. He asks the professor when the adventurers will return, but he replies that they will not return because there is no budget, since a large portion was used for the repairs of the barrier and the wall that Kane destroyed. This causes Kane to lose hope of demonstrating what he has learned. At night, feeling very irritated, he goes to the forest and takes his frustration out on all the monsters that cross his path. He complains that Cloud is an idiot for not fighting him first and ends up destroying a large portion of the forest. The soldiers are frightened when they see the massive destruction. thinking it was the work of the Dark Prince, and they all rush to the location. Meanwhile, Cain, feeling better, leaves quickly but accidentally drops his handkerchief. When Garn arrives at the scene and observes this, he is quite surprised, but he later realizes that everything was the work of his son upon recognizing the handkerchief. The next day, the king asks Cain if he knows anything regarding the prince or if the gods told him anything. Given the great destruction in the forest, Cain pretends to know nothing, saying they should not worry. However, Magna mentions to the king that they must cooperate with other nations to face such an enemy. Cain says there is no need for that, as he is certain it will not happen again. The king then asks if he is hiding something, but Cain gives an intimidating look, and the king apologizes for the disaster he caused. Meanwhile, in the forest, due to all the destruction, the seal holding Eren prisoner weakens even further. Afterward, we find ourselves at the Royal Academy, where on this day they are not holding magic classes, but rather summoning classes. They eventually call Cain, but being accustomed to not being allowed to participate, he tells the professor that he will study alone again. However, when he is about to leave, the professor stops him, saying that today they will not be performing magic attacks. Therefore, he can participate this time since he felt very excluded. It is mentioned that the academy brought an expert to teach on this day. He normally works as a palace mage, and his name is Rappi. He begins his class by mentioning that there are two types of magic summon. The first is when a bond of friendship is established with a monster, thus forming a contract, similar to what Cain did with Seth, as he saved him when he was gravely injured and therefore cared for Cain when he was exhausted. The second method is through a magic circle. In this way, the professor will not only teach them, but also evaluate their summons. He mentions that even if they cannot control the summoned monster or make friends with it, the magic circle will simply disappear. However, this is not entirely true, as we remember how Cain was almost killed by his first summoning. He shows them some papers with magic circles and tells them to attempt their first summons. Upon trying, many manage to summon adorable creatures, such as a mouse, a parrot, and a rabbit, while another boy manages to summon a massive beast, but it simply ignores him and leaves, as he does not have enough mana to dominate it. Nevertheless, the fact that he managed to summon such a beast is impressive, so he must continue training to increase his magic and one day be able to establish a contract. After everyone finishes their summons, it is Cain's turn, who becomes frightened at the thought that he could summon a massive monster. However, it is said that he should not worry, since if he does not want a contract, the creature will simply leave, so he can concentrate all the magic he wants. However, this was his worst mistake. Cain raises his hand and ends up summoning the high-ranking demon, who proclaims himself as the Prince of Darkness. To prevent his classmates and teachers from seeing that scene, he blinds them using an intense flash. Upon hearing his name, he thinks it might be a servant of Eren. The demon, seeing that it was a mere human who summoned him, uses his magic to scan his statistics and approaches him, but ends up falling to his knees asking for forgiveness for his behavior. He submits to Cain, saying that he will be his subordinate because, according to the creature, he is the chosen one of the gods, and that he will be delighted to destroy any nation he desires with all his demonic power. But Cain refuses, as he does not want to destroy any nation, besides not needing his demonic power. The creature says that his name is Seth, and that if they make a contract, he will respond immediately when summoned. Cain asks that he please not call him the chosen one and only by his name, something that he accepts and then disappears after they sign the contract. The worried professor asks if the creature said he was called the Prince of Darkness, so Cain responds that yes, but he did not want to make a contract, thinking that this would avoid many problems. However, later the king scolds him again, demanding that he tell the truth since he knew everything that happened. Cain apologizes and tells him about the demon, but the king demands that he tell the whole truth and stop hiding things. So he reveals that he actually summoned the Prince of Darkness, causing the king and the others to almost have a heart attack. They ask what to do with him, since knowing the fellow, they doubt that he made it disappear. Cain then tells them that he made a contract with him. The king asks if he does not know what self-control is, since if the demon had become irritated, he could have destroyed the entire capital. As usual, Cain apologizes for his imprudence, mentioning that by concentrating his magic, the circle demanded more and more, and that he never imagined that something like that would come out of it. They are impressed, as summoning the Prince of Darkness is not easy at all and requires an absurd amount of mana. The king thinks that perhaps this is due to the training with the first king and asks him to show his inhuman statistics, emphasizing that everything they see in that room cannot leave there, as it is a state secret, and if they tell anyone, the punishment will be execution. Then Cain shows his statistics, and everyone is impacted upon realizing that now he is a demigod, as his statistics are immeasurable, while everyone praises him for being a demigod, mentioning that with those titles they should call him Cain the Magnificent, but he asks them to please continue treating him the same way. The king asks him if by any chance he has no intention of destroying the kingdom, or rather, the entire world, but he responds that he would never do such a thing, mentioning that Seth himself told him the same. With this, the calmer king says that they will continue treating him as usual, but he knows that with those statistics, if he asked for the kingdom, he would have to hand it over. He says that nothing there can be revealed, and mentions to Cain that he will summon an audience to promote him to Viscount, handing him an entire city, and upon succeeding, he will formally announce his engagement to Telestia, besides not interfering in their relationship, making it clear that if he is not capable of protecting a city, much less will he be capable of protecting an entire nation. After that, in his mansion, Sylvia rejoices upon seeing the news and asks which region will be handed over to him, but they respond that it has not been informed yet. They only know that it is very close to the capital. At that moment, his butler informs him that his brother is in Gracia, and alerted his father that there are signs of an attack coming from the forest of monsters. He quickly meets with his brother, who rejoices to see him, informing him that the number of adventurers attacked has increased greatly in recent months. Therefore, he decided to send high-rank adventurers to investigate what is happening, revealing that the number of monsters has increased and they are enraged. He mentions that years ago the same thing had already happened, and according to the records, it seems to be identical to that occasion, commenting that he spoke with his father about sending many adventurers from other guilds, but since it is only an indication, there is not much they can do. Therefore, unfortunately, they still cannot send soldiers. After that, Cain decides to go to the forest, but his brother opposes it, since he is a lord of a noble house and is still a novice. However, Cain shows his gold card, leaving him quite surprised, saying that it is difficult to explain, but that he must remember when he was younger and defeated a red dragon without anyone's help. So his brother, seeing that he is quite strong, decides to trust him, while in the meantime, he will do everything necessary to give him support. Now at the guild, the receptionist complains that the capital is sending a child, but upon seeing his gold card, she is left in disbelief. At that moment, her boss apologizes, saying that she is new, and asks what the reason for his visit is. He tells her that his brother is the city administrator and said there are problems in the forest of monsters. She reveals that signs of attacks are increasing, and that no one can approach the forest, as the monsters seem to have gone mad and there are more and more injured people. At that moment, Milalina appears, and they are happy to see him again. He says he is there because it is his hometown, and his brother is the administrator, so he asked for his help with the monster problem. They say that the guild forced them to go there, since they sent all the high-rank adventurers. They worry at the thought that something might have happened, and they say that it is impossible to access that forest, as there are more and more monsters. They are stronger, and since they move in groups, it is almost impossible to advance. Therefore, they will try again after meeting with Claude and Nina, which reassures Cain more, thinking that they will be much safer with them. They wonder what they intend to do, and Cain mentions that he is going to investigate what is happening in the forest, but the girls say that it is too dangerous to enter there alone. Rudy comments that the guild will not take responsibility if something happens to him, since he is a noble, and that could cause many problems. But he responds that there is nothing to worry about because he is quite strong, and the girls confirm his power. Even so, Rudy asks that he at least go accompanied, and he responds that there is no problem, since even though they are not human, his companions are quite strong, as in the forest he summons his companions, and the two of them pounce on him, but they do not get along very well. During the journey, he feels that he is being observed, and he defeats several monsters along the way without finding whoever is watching him. Having a bad premonition, he decides to summon Seth, who appears agitated. But upon realizing that it is Cain, he calms down. He asks him to investigate the forest, because his tracking is not working, and he feels that something very strange is happening. Observing better, Seth mentions that there is a being with an overwhelming presence, and that is why many monsters are heading in its direction. There are also many other monsters, but what is happening is not normal, besides all of them being high level. He asks for help and Seth requests permission to summon his helper. So he summons his butler, Dalmatia, who is surprised to see a human. Seth explains that this is Cain, the human of the contract, and upon realizing that he is the chosen one of the gods, Dalmatia kneels in reverence. Cain asks Seth to stop saying that he wants to conquer the world, and tells him to hurry with the investigation. Seth reveals that Dalmatia is one of the 4 heavenly kings and very good at investigation, even being able to use special summons. However, Cain is startled to realize that they are cockroaches, asking him not to even think about showing them. At that moment, several red dragons appear, and Cain quickly defeats one of them, leaving Dalmatia impressed with his power. Cain returns to them with a large quantity of monsters, saying that he will return to the city to report what is happening, leaving them in charge of continuing the investigation. Upon leaving, Dalmatia comments to his master that it was fortunate they did not have to fight against Cain, because otherwise, they would have been killed in an instant. At the guild, the girls are surprised to see the large quantity of monsters he brought, and notably, all of them are rank S. Claude arrives asking what is happening, and Cain informs him that these are the monsters that are attacking the forest, and that if they reach the city, they will destroy everything. He mentions that the further they enter the forest, the stronger the monsters become, so they must be vigilant when entering. Meanwhile, Dalmatia discovers that in the center of the forest, there is something trying to intimidate them to prevent them from advancing. Seth asks if he is rusty, and he responds that he has not fought for centuries, so perhaps he is a little. But the heat of battle will make him regain his rhythm. At that moment, Aaron senses his presence, but he is not concerned upon realizing that it is not a subordinate of the gods. Upon reaching a hill, they are surprised by the enormous quantity of visible monsters. Aaron orders the attack while Seth teleports quickly to inform Cain. The soldiers sound the alarm of an imminent attack while the monsters begin their assault. Cain asks Ruddy to inform his brother to mobilize the soldiers, and says that Claude and Lena must gather all possible adventurers, as they must prevent the monsters from reaching the city. They ask what he is going to do, and Cain responds that he must return to the forest, worrying everyone since it is extremely dangerous. However, he mentions that his friends, even though they are not adventurers, are as powerful as one, causing Seth to become emotional upon realizing that Cain considers him his friend. Thus, he has no other choice but to give his life to help him. When they are about to leave, Tefana appears, rushing toward her husband, and someone asks what she is doing in that place. She reveals that her father requested reinforcements from the Order of Knights, and that she arrived before the rest because she departed quickly, but that the others are already on their way to the city. Cain says he must go to the forest, and she responds that she wants to accompany him. However, he says that she must stay in the city because she needs to lead the soldiers, and asks that she please protect his home, which motivates her at the thought that she must protect her husband's home. They depart quickly and ask why they are running when he can teleport, but he responds that it is because not all humans have this ability, and that even they themselves were frightened to see him use it, asking that he please control himself a little. Meanwhile, Dalmatia defeats the dragons by petrifying them quickly, feeling nostalgia while awaiting the fresh air of a battle. But he is almost devoured until Cain saves him with his inferno magic, defeating many monsters with it. Meanwhile, Aaron remains hidden in the depths of the forest awaiting his arrival. While they are being attacked, Seth tells Cain that he will be responsible for that area. In this way, he will be able to face Aaron alone. Cain asks if he will be fine on his own, and Seth responds that yes, as he will call his subordinates to help him. They comment that they will probably end up destroying the forest, so they ask if that is all right. Cain responds that they can cause damage, but without exaggerating, and Seth is impressed by his tranquility. Cain leaves everything in their hands, so Seth departs along with Dalmatia. The entire city is being evacuated. Tufana tells her friends to protect the citizens from the monsters. Claude asks if there is any sign of them. Then they explain that the monsters do not stop increasing. The situation is very dangerous, so Millie wants to investigate the forest. Claude asks what she is saying, and she responds that they cannot depend only on Cain's strength. They do not know how many monsters are out there, and even the professor wants to act. These words convince Nina, so Claude becomes irritated with her imprudence. But without having a choice, he decides to accompany her. He wonders if his wife loves him, and she responds that yes, obviously. In this way, everyone goes out to contain the monster invasion. Seth, on his own, summons his other servants, and they ask how they can help him and why he calls the 4 heavenly kings. Seth responds that an acquaintance asked this of him and that he needs them to keep the monsters there. This leaves everyone impressed, wondering who would dare to ask something of the Demon King himself. At that moment, Dalmatia greets them, and no one can believe it. It is the legendary General Dalmatia, and they wonder what he is doing there. He responds that it was the same contractor of Seth who asked him for help. The others wonder who this so-called contractor is and ask for more explanations. They respond that it is a demigod, also known as the chosen one of the gods, and say that they will explain later. But now they must follow the orders and protect the city, as they have no other choice. Meanwhile, Cain advances upon realizing that the situation is getting out of control. He uses his inferno magic to clear the area. Then he is attacked by a kind of dark plague, and finally he finds Aaron. Aaron says that as a pet of the gods, Cain arrived faster than he expected. Cain asks if he is the one responsible for that disaster. The ancient god of entertainment, Aaron. He responds that unfortunately, he only managed to resurrect part of his body, and that he had to borrow another body that makes him quite uncomfortable. Cain does not attack him and asks him to stop summoning monsters. Aaron just spins, saying that this is a game to see if the humans will be devoured, asking how he thinks he will be able to stop them, calling him funny and wondering how long his people will be able to resist. From a distance, Claude notices that there are people attacking from the air. Nina thinks he is joking, but he says no, asking her to look for herself. She sees that it is true and suggests that perhaps they are trying to reduce the monsters, potentially being on their side. Nina says that it could be, perhaps they are Cain's friends, which would explain everything. At that moment, they inform Seth that there are too many monsters, so he orders them to eliminate as many as possible and leave the rest to the humans. Nina uses her search ability and realizes that they are approaching. There is no more time to talk, so the red-haired girls ask to go to the front line. Meanwhile, Aaron tells Cain that it is sickening, as those eyes are the same as those of the humans who sealed them years ago. Cain understands that he is referring to his parents. Aaron says that he thought about waiting to see him and make him suffer, but now he wants to make him disappear. Cain prepares his attack, but stops for a moment upon seeing that the monsters were burned with a single blow. He cannot let him hit him with that, so he uses his inferno magic thinking it would stop him, but it does not seem to affect him. Aaron realizes that he is not using all of his strength and questions how he expects to hurt him with such weak magic. Cain tries to concentrate more power, but Aaron does not intend to let him do that so easily. Meanwhile, his friends continue fighting against the monsters. They have been fighting for a long time and wonder when it will end. Claude says he does not know, but he is certain that they will have good drinks when all of this is over. His wife says she will call it a day, so they are going to finish this soon. Meanwhile, Cain continues facing the attacks from Aaron, who summons his creatures to attack him. This bothers him greatly, so he pushes them away with his tail. Cain cannot believe it. His companion Haku is in danger. Returning to his friends, they do not know when it will end. Nina is out of magic, so Millie says to take her away. Claude says not to mind that, as he only has one life and will not give up so easily, although he wonders how much longer they will be able to resist. Nina uses her last magic to help him, but this distracts him and the monster goes straight to attack him. Now they are in danger, but someone eliminates the monster at the last moment. Tufana finally arrives to help them. saying she is proud that they managed to contain the invasion until now. She asks them not to worry, as reinforcements have already arrived and the city is well protected. From now on, she will be on the front line to protect them. Claude gives thanks but says he does not want to let her fight alone. Everyone will help her as good friends. Cain sees Aaron attacking his companions who resist as much as they can. Aaron says that these things bother him greatly, so Cain asks what he means, wanting to know how protecting his friends and the things he loves could bother him. Aaron tells him to shut up, calling him a pet of the gods, but Cain responds that the gods have nothing to do with it. He simply wants to see all of his friends smiling. He activates his power to the maximum and Aaron recognizes that the light is the same as before. It is the sanctuary and Cain says he will protect everyone. And then their powers collide as if in a great battle. From a distance, his friends wonder what that gigantic light is. Cain desires to protect everyone's smile and asks for more power from his parents. His companions try to stop him and he asks what is happening. Then the others arrive saying that it is dangerous, that they liked seeing what happened, but that it could cause a major problem for him. As the chosen one of the gods, he should realize that he is wrong. He realizes that he has already defeated the evil dragon, and the monsters have finally left the forest. The city was protected and all citizens were saved. And finally, the invasion has at last ended. With that, Cain reunites with all of his friends. He managed to protect their smiles and save all the people in that world. The others comment that the gods sent a good chosen one, that he is a good boy, the kindest they have ever met. On the way back, the king asks what that gigantic light in the sky was, since it was seen even from the capital. Wanting to know if it was his doing, Cain explains that he was fighting a black dragon and launched his magic at it, saying that some believe such a bright light means the gods descended to earth. Cain apologizes, saying that advanced magic was not enough to defeat Aaron, so he had to use emperor-level magic. Because of this, they ask how he managed to use that level of magic. The king had told him several times not to use such great power, that he needed to control himself. They also ask about the man they saw flying and casting spells. Cain responds that it was the demon king, whom he summoned to help him in the fight. Everyone is shocked, wanting to know if the king can no longer take it, and tells the minister that Cain will marry his daughter Telestia, but that he cannot give him the throne now, as others say he will then have to give him something else. Cain wonders what it will be and the minister suggests giving him his own domain. The king agrees. As a reward for his deeds and thinking of Telestia's future, he will grant him a territory. Thus an audience is organized where the king appoints him Viscount and grants him the domain of Drintor. From now on, he will be known as Cain von Silford Drintor and will serve the kingdom under that name. Cain accepts with gratitude and promises to dedicate body and soul to governing this territory. In this manner, contributing to the prosperity of the kingdom. Tifana is impressed that he received Drintor and feels very proud of her husband. Cain wonders what is special about that place, and they explain that the Adventurers Guild usually tests their strength there, and many nobles who tried to govern ended up fleeing. Cain asks if he will have to move there. Telestia thinks this is cruel, and says she will complain to her father. But Cain responds that it is all right. In fact, he is excited to see the place and wants to build a new city, a place where everyone can smile. Everyone agrees with him, but they ask him not to exaggerate, and thus they depart toward the city of Drintor. There the guard is impressed to see that Cain is an rank adventurer, and receives him quickly in Drintor. Later, the king asks what happened to Cain, so they tell him that as soon as he set foot in Drintor, the guild tried to attack him, as if it were a way of punishing him. Apparently, it was a kind of welcome, but they learned not to mess with Cain, so the place ended up completely destroyed. Later at the Cat's Tavern, they were peacefully drinking when a customer began to behave very poorly toward the maid. Cain became angry and expelled the adventurers one by one. But that is not all. He also ended up being arrested. When Telestia returned, she said that Drintor seemed like a horrible place, and Cain could not believe it the first time he went there. At that moment, Seth appears asking for help. Cain asks what happened and Telestia is impressed to see the Demon King asking for help. It turns out his wife discovered he was cheating on her and kicked him out of the house. His wife appears from behind and says that perhaps he has no notion of the problems he causes. She introduces herself as Lafana and apologizes for her husband's behavior. Kane also appears and Lafana says her husband will give explanations later. Then she wants to ask what Kane thinks of what her husband did. Kane responds that it is undoubtedly unforgivable, and he cannot believe how he could think of another woman while having such beauty at home. He calls her beautiful and Seth comments that before the marriage she was very sweet. She responds that someone who cheats has no credibility. Probably he also said beautiful things before they married, saying that she was the only one and that he would love her forever. After marriage, cheating is not an option. Kane does not understand why he feels bad if he did nothing wrong. These words please Lafana, as it was exactly what she wanted to hear. If Kane ever cheated on those two girls, he already knows what would happen. And Kane says he understands. He tells Seth to return home and Seth asks if he was forgiven. Kane responds that it is only for this time because they are being observed. Thus they return to their world. Continuing, it is mentioned that Kane complained to the church, as they were demanding many offerings. Besides, there was also a problem with the underground guild that attacked the priest in the shadows, but Kane was already there and expelled them easily. He really did many things, and that is not enough. For example, he built a wall out of nowhere. This made Hinami and another goddess ask if everything is alright. He responds that there is no problem, as Kane still has many things to do for them. The girls are impressed to learn that he built a castle even more impressive than the king's. Perhaps he exaggerated a little. Kane asks if they only realize this now, and they ask why he wants that castle. And that is how the anime ends. Do not forget to leave that like, subscribe to the channel, and if you have made it this far do not forget to comment dragon. A kiss from Bat-kun.